I personally support Priti Patel, the Home Office, stripping Jihadi Jack Letts of his citizenship, but with at least 320 reported cases of people still waiting in the wings to go back to their various native countries. I think probably the way ahead, and I don't know if you'd agree with this or not, the way ahead is we've got to have some sort of international agreement, an international court founded through an international agreement to try these cases and dispose of them correctly. Something similar to The Hague, but something which is more bespoke to, because I don't think we've ever had it before where citizens of a country have gone away to fight essentially against the country where they're inherent in.
No,
Okay.
I think that's an absolutely fantastic point. I think one of the criticisms of Brexit, interesting, is that people feel that Britain is very much adopting an isolationist philosophy. I think this issue, we do need more international cooperation because we're not the only country where our citizens have left to join Islamic State.
Right.
So I do think there needs to be greater cooperation with, fellow countries in Europe and also with the North America.
I think presumably, Andy, what you're meaning by this is that it shouldn't be the responsibility of individual countries to have to be sort of dealing with this problem on their own, right?
No, that's exactly what I mean. I think it should be an international agreement. And I think it can rise above Brexit and the arguments of Brexit. And I think it's completely separate to Brexit. I mean, as a country in the world, we have a stake in the world, regardless of our political foundation, the same as America, the same as Japan, the same as everywhere. And I think there's got to be an international agreement between countries, probably something from the UN to kick it off. But it's got to be an agreement for how to deal with these things.
God's sake.
No, there is that. but someone has got to take the lead, on this, because what do we do with the other 320? I say strip them all of their citizenship and never let them back.
Yeah.
But they're just sort of, clouding around in a desert-type camp.
Yes, I think that is the problem, Andy. Thanks for your call. I think that's right, isn't it, Rakib? Because a lot of the Shamima Begum case, for example, which kicked up an awful lot of sort of debate in this country.
Absolutely.
It turns out her husband was from Holland, I think, the Netherlands, wasn't
Yeah.
he? And there was some suggestion that she might have to go there with him. But, her case is still more... it's kind of unresolved still, isn't it? I don't know.
It was
what
a
exactly is
chaotic
happening.
situation. I think at the time, Home Secretary Sajid Javid...
Yeah.
I feel that, in a sense, he tried shifting on to Bangladesh. I thought that was a little bit irresponsible, to be honest. The girl, she's never set foot in Bangladesh. She can't speak a word of Bengali. She might well be of Bangladeshi origin, but she was born and raised here. And I can only imagine when Sajid was trying to, foist her and shift her onto Bangladesh, that all the bureaucrats in Dhaka were probably smoking their cigars and having a good laugh at him, to be honest. So I think there needs to be a more mature, multinational approach in terms of how we actually deal with this problem, for sure.
Exactly right. Because we've also got the problem, I believe, of about 300 to 400 former jihadis who went to fight for ISIS have been let back into Britain already. We hear about these very high-profile cases like Jihadi Jack and Shamima Begum, but there's many others who we don't hear about who are already back here. Now, I don't know, and I'm not sure I have any confidence in the way the state is rehabilitating those individuals.
I think that there are some people who feel that these individuals can be de-radicalised.
Yes.
I think
What do you think?
I have a more conservative position. I think that I'm still sceptical. I want to see more positive results.
Yeah.
But I think also with that, this is an experiment at the end of the day. I'm very conservative when it comes to law and order and public security. This isn't something to experiment with. I think ultimately... I'm very sceptical of those de-radicalisation programs and how they're actually being orchestrated. This idea that we get former ex-extremists, spearheading these programs, I think it's political correctness.
Well, I'm not
mad,
sure
really.
about anybody who's a former political extremist or a jihadi becoming somehow more de-radicalised and able to help people stop other people from doing exactly what they've done.
I think it's risky.
That's
very risky. My view.
Yeah, because, you have to buy into the fact that first you have to just believe them, which might not be a good idea to begin with. And when you see what happened at London Bridge, when you see people becoming radicalised just as a result of being on the internet with some people without ever having to go and be trained to do anything, and you hear the police are still fighting every day about 500 different cases that they're investigating, we still have a massive problem in this country, and it's just been fortunate, I think, that we haven't had an incident of terror for a while.
I think that we should be very grateful to our intelligence communities. They do, exceptionally good work in terms of trying to keep us as safe as possible. I think in terms of, as I said before, this thing with the de-radicalisation programs, I think it's a very risky way in terms of conducting counter-extremism policy.
Now, here's a question from someone, which I'm not sure is a decent question to ask you, but I'm going to ask it for your answer anyway, because a lot of people ask me this question, that they take exception to people talking about Islam and Judaism being called a race. He says, why can't liberal snowflakes understand a simple concept? You are not born Jewish, Muslim or Christian. It is a choice. You can wake up one day and choose not to believe.
I think that's very interesting. So we were talking earlier about that case about the young girl who criticised halal meats in her academic work, and it was greeted with these comments. So this is an obscene racial comment.
Yeah.
You can be black and Muslim. You can be white and Muslim. And you can be South Asian and Muslim. So this idea, this sort of almost this racialization of Islam, it's deeply unhelpful, and it's just factually inaccurate as well.
Which then takes you back again to what we were talking about. We didn't quite finish the thought, I think, about Islamophobia and hate crime.
I prefer the term anti-Muslim prejudice. I don't even like the term Islamophobia.
No, I don't.
For being particularly honest, I think it's unhelpful.
I don't think it's helpful. I don't think having a hate crime specific to what somebody says is helpful. I remember there was a case in Scotland when I was living and working up there of two guys who got into a fight in a bar, which is a pretty frequent occurrence in Scotland, right? The difference being that these two guys, one was Scottish, one was English, and the English guy, or I think the Scottish guy called the English guy, you English so-and-so, whatever it was. And it was then registered as a hate crime because it was supposed to be some kind of anti-nationalist, thing that was said. Instead of just charging people for having a punch-up, they got much more complicated, and it was now a hate crime. And I just don't think that helps.
I think it's a slippery slope as well. As I said, I think that one of the greatest things that, from my personal perspective, one of the greatest things about this country is the critical thinking. Critically analysing ideologies and their weaknesses, why they may be unhelpful in the modern British context. And I feel that with the Islamophobia definition, as I said earlier, there was a dangerous conflation between anti-Muslim prejudice, which we should stamp out and we should be very firm about, and legitimate concerns and legitimate criticism of Orthodox Islamic doctrine.
Do you think Orthodox Islamic doctrine does not belong in Britain? Do you think that, we've had this assimilation conversation about, women's rights in Britain as opposed to women's rights in Saudi Arabia? If you come to live here from a Muslim country where women are treated as second-class citizens, and I know that many Muslims would say, well, that's not true. We don't treat them as second-class citizens. We just,
well, they're talking nonsense if they say that doesn't exist in the UK.
Because they do. No, but what I'm saying is they would argue that, putting their women in burqas is a mark of respect. It's not a mark of subjugation. Do you know what I mean? What I'm saying is that should the assimilation conversation take place more?
Absolutely.
Should we say, no, if you want to live here, you behave as if you are British?
I think that I think it's great that we're having these sort of conversations because I don't think they happen.
People
often
are frightened
enough.
of them.
I think, but there's a lack of political leadership as well. That's the truth. We have politicians who are very scared about even raising these points. I think that in terms of, are there certain things Orthodox Islamic doctrine does have a place in the UK? I think it's something that we need to talk about a lot more.
Okay.
Because for me, from my perspective, I think that, we have this whole debate about gender equality, but I think the one thing is that there's very clear cases of misogyny and patriarchal coercion within migrant communities. I expect our politicians to call that out.
Yes, and they don't.